Draining terrorists of a home base. Iraq declaring victory over the Islamic State, saying that country is clear of any major ISIS elements. And in Syria, Russian President Vladimir Putin saying he's pulling Russians out because the terrorists are almost gone there as well. But what about terror attacks here in our home? Here to react is Peter Brookes, Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow. Peter, is the caliphate finished, at least in Iraq?
Well, if you're talking about the caliphate, the state itself, it has crumbled. But I don't think that's the end of the Islamic State, or the ISIS, as it's also known. They could certainly return to their roots as an insurgency, David, which is where they started. There may be 3,000 or so fighters still in that region, according to some estimates. They can attack. They can have their home game there in Iraq and Syria. There's other places they're operating: Afghanistan, the Sinai, Libya, Yemen, Africa, parts of Africa. We had that terrible attack again on U.S. forces, and of course they look at the far enemy, which is us and Europe. And I think that there are concerns over the holidays. Before
we leave the Mideast, I'm looking at Syria now on the left of the screen. When I hear Putin say anything, I'm skeptical. But when he says it's pretty much gone in Syria as well, I am a little skeptical. Aren't there pockets still where ISIS does have control of territory?
Yeah, I mean, Iraq's got a better handle on its own country than in Syria, where there's still a civil war going on. And there's other groups there as well, one group that was previously called al-Nusra. It's got new names now, but it's an al-Qaeda. And for a long time, they were a very effective fighting force there. So it's something we also have to think about. But yeah, Syria is much more tumultuous, I think, than Iraq is in terms of ISIS.
And then we have something that has been termed the cyber caliphate. That is the kind of cyber warfare that leads people like the guy who was apparently responsible for the attack here in Manhattan today to do what they do. How successful can a cyber caliphate without a piece of land to call their own be?
That's a really good point. And, you know, we've been talking for a long time about ISIS as a cyber superpower, and they were. They had used a lot of social media. They've been able to inspire people, radicalize them, recruit them, communicate with them over the internet, either openly or through encrypted communications. And this is a way for them to reach out much further than their area of operation in the Middle East or other parts of the world to get people to do things. We don't know all the data on this individual yet, but it's certainly a possibility. And, David, we have the possibility of return of foreign fighters as well.
Right.
Remember, tens of thousands went over there. They could return, but they can also still recruit people to undertake terror attacks beyond where they actually are.
Well, and we also, in addition to everything you mentioned, we also have the chain migrants, like the suspect in today's attack and the suspect in the attack that mowed down 8 people here in Manhattan last spring. I mean, the question is, how much, it's kind of a shift in gears here, but how much is this whole chain migration program causing us headaches here in the United States?
Well, David, fundamentally, the empirical data tells us that most of our terror attacks are homegrown. They aren't people who went abroad and came back. There aren't people from overseas that are come here. So that's something we have to understand, and that's where ISIS and al-Qaeda has been successful here, and in Europe is getting people to do that. I'm not an immigration specialist, but we do find that some of these attacks are people that have been here in the United States. And this individual came before ISIS anybody was even talking about ISIS, right? 7 years ago. But our problem right now has been, and we've had over 100 terrorist plots since 9/11, is fundamentally a homegrown one, but we have to worry about the movements as well.
We do indeed. Peter, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Melissa.
All right, wildfires raging.